It is Monday on Daily Delivery. Patrick Reusse here with me. I am Michael Rand. Patrick, you and I were thinking the same thing this morning. As soon as we started talking, before we started recording, you mentioned this, and I had already thought of the same thing. Patrick, I don't think it's terribly surprising that the Vikings and the Wild won on Sunday. You know, the Wild have been going pretty good since making the coaching change. You know, Vikings were playing an inferior opponent. They were favored in that game, even if it's a road game at Vegas. But Patrick, none of us would have imagined that the Vikings and Wild would not just win, but win by the same score, 3-0. What is this, 1912? Like, what are we doing here? 3-0?
I looked up the Wild score about midnight last night before I nodded off and said, wait a minute.
Too.
3-0. That sounds familiar. I said,
yes.
Wait, this has never happened in history.
It must not have, yeah.
That the football team and the hockey team won by the same score. I'm not willing to say that the North Stars in that, maybe they both won 7-3 someday or something.
Right.
But
7-6,
I can pretty much say it, since I think the Vikings have only had one other 3-0 game in their history, 1971, a famous game against Green Bay at Met Stadium. I would say we can pretty well state that hasn't happened, that the Wild and the Vikings or any hockey team, any NHL team and NFL team have won by the same score. I don't think that's happened very often. That's for sure. It was a horrible game. A lot of times I'll just, especially that time of day, I got other stuff going. I don't focus completely on every Viking play. But I couldn't leave yesterday. It was so bad. It was mesmerizing. It was like a horror movie. It was like a bad horror movie from the 1950s. It was terrible. Poor Josh Dobbs. They were trying to make excuses for him in the first half, and then they finally gave up and started saying, Mullens came in and he actually made the right pass to a guy out in the flat and made a couple of decent throws, not with any zip on them, but our Josh Dobbs phenomenon. And it's funny, Mike. It just seems that the first two games he was fine, and then they said, okay, let's keep him in the pocket. Let's not let him run out of the pocket. So he can't throw out of the pocket. We have discovered why he had 7 teams in 3 months or something. He can't throw out of the pocket, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's not dressed when they go to Cincinnati, that they have Jaron Hall as the backup. But, I give O'Connell credit. He said, okay, we're going to let him try it with, the last 2 haven't been good. He didn't flat out say that, but we're going to let him try it with Jefferson. And then, of course, Jefferson got hurt. But, this was by far he was bad last week with all those interceptions, but he was way worse yesterday. He was horrible. And managed with the defense. Basically, Vegas was 3 plays and a punt. They kept giving it back to him, and they never moved anywhere.
No.
It was just brutal. And they end up winning, so they're still I think they're 6th now in the playoffs, but they are. This team isn't going to make any kind of a run. Although they get to play Detroit twice, and Detroit's leaking like we knew they would. So they can still win the division and get a home game.
Yeah, they control their own destiny. They win out; they're going to be the division champs. But
I don't know. They might lose at Cincinnati next week.
Yes.
They're capable of losing to anybody right now. The offensive line, that's the big thing coming out of that. Who's going to play? O'Neal gets hurt. And then Reisner gets hurt. And they basically got the left tackle, and everybody else is banged up. So what's the offensive line going to look like when they get to Cincinnati next? Because it's a short week. They're playing Saturday. So they won, but it was a disaster.
Pretty much.
Football game with the injuries and everything else going on. It was terrible. They kept talking about having 30,000 Viking fans there, and they probably was, but they didn't make any noise at all.
What was there to
It
cheer
was the,
for? It was
I
3-0. I was like,
it was the
you
quietest place
can,
I've ever heard for a football
you
game. It was
can,
amazing.
there can be a bad game that's like 16-13, and at least there's probably
Yeah,
some moments and there's a touchdown somewhere in there.
yeah,
But 3-0, like if it's just punts, and it was just punts
uh,
too. There was like
yeah,
there was
yeah.
what was the signature play of the game? Like
Um,
the probably the Ivan Pace interception to ending, and he had a great game. Like the defense was
yeah.
very good, but man, like 3-0. Like imagine if you traveled all the way to Vegas for that. Imagine if you did that.
Uh, Yeah, I would. You would remember your Saturday night party more than you would the
Yeah.
game. That's for sure. So yeah, it was brutal. It was unbelievable because you're right. I mean, how many were just three and outs? How
A
many
lot.
was there? Not even one first down. It
No,
was.
the Vikings. And I
Was
think
it?
the Vikings didn't even turn it over. They had zero
Oh,
turnovers.
yeah, that's true. Otherwise,
Like,
otherwise, Raiders were down there where they could have kicked a field goal, so they could still be playing 3-3. It could have been
yes,
3-3. One of the trading
could have
games.
still been going.
Oh
Well,
man,
they would have called
man.
it at some point for overtime. But yeah, now here, Patrick. Here's the thing, and you brought this up a little bit already, but yeah, Dobbs mania is definitely over. He had that great,
Mhm.
he had some great moments and that relief win over Atlanta. They helps him beat the Saints with that great first half, then cools down a bit in the
Uh-huh.
second half. But ever since then, eh, you know, ever since he's learned more of the offense and as defenses have figured out, okay, here's what he doesn't do all that well, especially with the Vikings, he's gotten worse. Like how do we reconcile the fact that he keeps getting worse the more he knows about this offense?
And they made a point of telling us yesterday on the broadcast how he stayed in town all week last week during the bye week to learn the offense better.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was what they were telling us. He wanted to become more familiar
Yeah.
with plays he couldn't run. So it was,
Yeah.
yeah,
What was going on in these meetings with O'Connell during the bye
yeah.
week? Like, what are they? They're sitting there hashing out film. They're like, okay, here's what I want you to do. Okay, yeah, here's what I do well, and it results in 0 points. That's baffling to me. You would have thought they could come out with something that was better than that. And some of it's the Raiders are pass rushing things like that, but some of it's just the game plan wasn't great and Dobbs was terrible. And whatever you want to do with that, I don't get it.
I know, and in Arizona, I think he was 1-7, right? But
Yes,
he was never. They was never like completely
no,
inept as far as. I mean, they blew some games and he made some mistakes, and they were a bad team. But he was never like this. It was junior varsity he had no idea what he was doing, the amazing thing to me was the idiotic, fantastically stupid play calling by the Raiders too. What was?
yes.
Okay, we've thrown this little screen pass here 9 times for 3 yards. Let's do it again. Each time on the first play, they threw this thing so they were 2nd and 12. Everybody knew it was coming. They were stupid. They were so stupid. It was amazing. And then the Vikings, of course, couldn't do anything with all the endless opportunities they have. Yeah, that was one of the worst football games of all time. There's no doubt about it.
And through all of that, they're 7-6.
Yeah.
Like you said, they've got a decent chance still of being at least a wild card. And if they win at Cincinnati next week, they'll at least put themselves in a conversation where, hey, if you win your last 3 division games, you are going to be the division champs because you're 2 games behind Detroit now, and you play Detroit twice. Detroit leaking a little bit of oil right now. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if one of those 2 teams, Green Bay, has a really soft schedule down the stretch. Wouldn't be shocking if one of these teams runs them down or at least gives them a scare. But, they're almost certainly, Patrick, going to start their 4th quarterback in 14 games next week. It's like what I can't remember a season like that. I know they've had a lot of seasons where they cycled through guys, that back in the Tommy Kramer, Wade Wilson, Sean Salisbury, whoever else is going to stick kind of days, and even the Tavares Jackson, Gus Frerotte, Kelly Holcomb. You never know who's going to play kind of games, but 4 and 14 games. That to me is, I can't tell if this is one of Kevin O'Connell's greatest coaching efforts or if what's happening to Dobbs and the offense this year is kind of an indictment of him.
I don't know. I thought the offensive line was better until about 2 weeks ago when they
Yeah.
started to get back banged up, and yesterday I just don't know what that. I don't know what he could have done to change things. He couldn't run, and they couldn't run the ball, and Dobbs couldn't make a play, and but I mean, it was horrible, and then they, you go back to the Bears loss too. Now, who's their? They play Detroit twice, and who's the other? Is
Green Bay.
Oh, Green Bay.
Green Bay on New Year's Eve night.
New Year's Eve night here.
Yeah.
It's here. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's because they're playing pretty good right now, but they play tonight. I look at them and I still think they can screw up at any moment. I don't think they're that good. So right now, you look at the division. The Bears should have beaten the Lions twice in a row. They had them beat a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
They're all even. They're all the same. You got 4 teams in the division. They're all the same. They're all mediocre as could be. So, you could end up winning the division, I guess. I don't know if they're the defense is good though. It's amazing the turnaround. Amazing the turnaround Flores has made with this defense, and some players that we didn't expect. Ace and
Pace, he was great.
The others, the third safety, and I mean they got these guys who make plays. So and they've made Vegas look like complete stoops yesterday. So I don't know. It was it's a game to talk about for all week because
for the ages.
What was your most scream at the TV moment yesterday when you watched that game? If you're a Viking fan, what did you say? When was it? Would you say what is going on here? When was it when you got completely? I should have got up at halftime and driven to a bar and listened to people complain. Right. It would have been great. So,
I had some stuff to do yesterday afternoon, so it was one of those games where I was going to kind of catch up to it kind of halfway through and watch the rest of it. But inevitably, I start getting a bunch of texts on one of my major group texts, and I'm trying to avoid them, but I'm seeing them like, what is going on here? This game is terrible. I'm like, okay, I kind of got to know what's happening here. So I check in and I see that it's 0-0 at halftime, that Jefferson's already left with an injury and now he's out. I'm like, what is this? So I didn't watch much of the first half in retrospect, but I did catch up to it. But yeah, it's kind of funny too, Patrick. It's kind of like the comments on any of our stories or social media. Like if the Vikings were winning that game, the group text would have been silent. But when anytime something terrible is happening, it lights up, and it is something for people to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it is, and I always say I remember when we were originally going to start having comments in the paper, we're going to have these intellectual discussions on the topics of the day. Hasn't quite turned out that way.
No,
hasn't quite turned out that way. So anyway,
screaming matches between two people who haven't read the article. That's what we're gonna have. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know what to make of it. Anyway, they're 7-6 somehow through all of this. They're probably going to wind up something like 8-9 or 9-8. They've got winnable games, losable games.
I was thinking today though, they're going to bring Cousins coming back.
Yeah, unless they just decide he's
And you know what? Everybody's saying, "Well, how are they going to pay him?" He's not going to. There's not going to be a big market for him. He's hurt. He's never won anything. He's coming back from an injury. They like him here. He's not going to get a 4-year deal for
he's not going to get 4.
You're gonna get him back for low 20s, I think.
Oh, I don't think so. I do.
Low
20s. Wow.
I mean, now maybe it'll progress a little, but I think that no, he's not. Nobody's going to give him $30 million. I don't think so. Who wants him? Who wants him? That's that close. I don't think anybody wants him. I don't really.
I think he'll at least get
not going someplace that's building, and who's in New England's not going to bring him in and thinking they're on the brink of winning or something. I don't think there's going to be a market for him. He's 35 or 6 years old. He's coming off an injury. he's not the modern quarterback. He's can't move. He probably moved less well. I think he's probably going to be more valuable to this team than anybody else.
That I agree with. I think he's going to get 30 to 35 for a couple of years.
I don't. Maybe you can give them some kind of a deal, or they're going to have to. What do they have? Those voidables at the end?
Voids, yeah, they'll put some void years on that thing. That's for sure. He's already got, like, they're going to have to, cap wise, they're going to have to account for the creativity they've already had on this deal. That just doesn't go away when you sign a new contract. Ben Gessling has talked about that a lot. So there's still going to be some extra cap penalties for all of those past deals. But yeah, he's still going to get paid something. But yeah, his value, his worth is certainly more here. He doesn't want to leave. He likes it here. He doesn't want to go somewhere else. I don't think. Unless he's bitter that they didn't give him the deal, and I don't think that's how he is, though. I think that's probably not how he's going to go.
I don't think there's a big market for him. Plus, I think the Russell Wilson situation has taught people a lesson. That quarterbacks can be done at 35. Don't just think because he's been good, he's going to keep being good, and that you should bring in some veteran for unlimited money.
No,
and the Jets found that out too. The guy lasted 4 plays. I don't care what anybody says. Aaron Rodgers lasted 4 plays.
Yeah.
I'd give Cousins a 2-year, $50 million contract. If you don't like it, take a hike.
Yeah, I like his leverage has increased a little bit in the last few games. You start to see the offense without him. You start to think, okay, obviously you'd have someone else that had the benefit of full training camp, things like that, if you went a different way. But yeah, it's fascinating. I think Ben laid it out pretty well. All the stuff that's out in front of them now over the next 4 games. Now, this is kind of the preview before the Raiders game. Like, hey, I don't want to think about a Vikings future that doesn't include Brian Flores, but he's going to be a head coaching candidate again. Like, what's this team next year if they don't have Brian Flores? What's this team next year if they, still got the Jefferson contract hanging over? You got Darisaw extension to figure out. You got quarterback to figure out. It's a lot for this offseason.
Yeah, yes, it is. And, yesterday did not improve your outlook.
No.
We got less problems than we thought, especially with the offensive line and what's going on there now with everybody getting hurt. And I don't know. They can you look at the schedule, they could beat anybody and they could go 0-4.
They sure could. Anywhere between 0-4 and 4-0, which probably means they'll go 2-2 and finish 9-8 and probably make the playoffs and probably not last very long.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
Speaking of defensive coordinators who might leave, we know one that already left, Patrick. Joe Rossi going to Michigan State. Interesting. That's interesting to me.
This coach, Jonathan Smith, has got a really good reputation, Oregon State guy getting out of the Pac-2. He was,
the Pac-2.
He was the Pac-2, Washington State and Oregon State. So Michigan State, and what's the deal here?
I don't know.
He was making good money. They paid him a good money here. And he Fleck lost his offensive coordinator last year. So we probably were blaming the offensive coordinator for the problems last year. And so he decided to leave. And now the opposite. Now it's the opposite. Rossi, who we love. Now the defense didn't have a very good year, but they didn't have very good players.
No.
So they had a few good players, but I got a hunch that Fleck's the kind of guy that when he has a Monday meeting after a loss, he probably not. He might say it's all on me to On Saturday afternoons, I don't think he says it's all on me at those meetings. I got a hunch he's kind of like Holtz, and he's not an easy guy to work for because of the enormity of the ego. And the guy just said, "Okay, I'm going to go someplace where I don't have to listen to this every week." That's just utter speculation on my point. But it is interesting that this certainly doesn't improve Joe Rossi's chances of being a head coach someplace going to Michigan State. So I think it's a reflection on a coach that's hard to work for. Yeah. And they might pay him an extra $100,000, but that's not why.
He was about to make $1.5 million here next year. His contract was going to get better. Like, sounds like Michigan. I saw Randy Johnson's story. Michigan State's defensive coordinator was making about $1.2 million last year. So I'm sure he's getting something more than that. Maybe must be something more than he was going to make here. But it's not a clear like, hey, they were underpaying their assistants kind of thing. That's not what's going on here.
No, and when asked about it, I'm sure Fleck will blame it on money, but I don't know. It's the guy he was rushed into the job, and really you didn't think had much chance to keep it when they made the change in mid-season, right?
Yeah, mid-2018, right? When that was kind of the turnaround that year.
And he had been at Rutgers, and on a failed coaching staff at Rutgers, he had no big reputation as a coach, and they turned it around, and he sent a lot of guys to the NFL, that's for sure. So I would think it's a loss. Where are they going to go get a new one? I don't know.
Maybe promote from within. I don't know, but yeah, I
don't know. They've had some issues here, haven't they? I mean,
interesting off season. Just like well, and if you didn't like the defense this year, their two best wins this year were probably 13-10 over Nebraska and 12-10 over Iowa.
Yeah,
who won those games? The defense did.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. But now we got a run and gun quarterback from New Hampshire. So
it's Brosmer, by the way, not Brosmer. I've been calling him Brosmer. It's Brosmer. I watched some highlights the other day. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole to see just what this guy looks like. Yeah, he looks like playing at a different level, but he's accurate. He looks pretty good. He can play.
Put up a lot of points. Yeah, they lost a lot of. They lost a lot of 45-35 games. So
yes,
yeah, he'll probably be an improvement. And the kid that's leaving hasn't gotten a job yet.
No,
not that I can see in the portal anyway.
Well, and I went back and looked at his body of work. Like I said this to Chip when I had him on, I think last week. I was like, man, we pumped him up an awful lot off of what amounted to one game, that game against Wisconsin. We kind of fell into the, what if he can do this for a full season kind of trap, and they hyped him up, and it was like, we say he had a disappointing season. He hadn't really done much until this year. Like, I know they were optimistic about him, but I think we being the collective followers, some of us who watch this team and write about this team and talk about this team, might have fallen into the narrative that they were putting out there instead of following the evidence of our eyes, which was that, hey, aside from that game, he wasn't terribly good or accurate last year. Why would he be a lot better this year?
Yeah, well, and then the coach was telling us he had an NFL future. The season started, so he was talking him up big time. So he's, part of the responsibility for the public's optimism has to be him. But then again, we're still waiting for Vic Viramontes to come in here and take us to the Rose Bowl. So, it's, I don't know. They're with the new league coming in, and I think Gopher football has a chance to become really irrelevant here if they don't figure something out here. Because you're going to be, you don't have the beloved. You don't have 6 games in the beloved Big Ten West next year. No. You have, everything is you're playing your only guaranteed opponents are Wisconsin and Iowa, right?
I think that's right. Yeah,
and those are the only two, and otherwise it's now. I got a hunch the league's going to maneuver the schedule so that if you're rotten, for a couple of years and they're putting the schedule out, you're going to end up getting to play Rutgers and Maryland and Indiana and Purdue, and
Right.
you're going to get to play an easier schedule, because they're going to make sure that Ohio State's playing one of the LA teams, and maybe both of them, and they're gonna make this schedule TV friendly, which means Ohio State and Michigan will be playing the toughest schedules in the league, I would think. And if you're at the bottom, you're going to be playing an easier schedule. But who knows? The first, they got the schedule out for like 5 years, right? Or 4 years or something. They put it out. And,
I think so, yeah.
It looks fairly balanced as far as you're playing 2 of the 4 West Coast teams every year, and 1 at home, 1 on the road, and you're going to be underdog in all those games. So,
right.
Anyway,
how are you? And in this era of college football, it's always been hard to kind of break out from like the bottom into the middle and the top tier of teams, or how are you supposed to get better now? Like you can say you can go ahead and have a great recruiting class, but you could lose everybody after a year if they don't like their playing time, if they just decide they're going to transfer, if your key players transfer. Like it's so hard to break out of a bad cycle right now. So if they have another bad year or two, then all of a sudden you're like, well, how are they supposed to do this? It's not like the pros. Like if you're at the bottom of the Big Ten, your roster is going to get rated. If you're at the bottom of the league in a pro league, you're going to get a top 5 draft pick. Like you're going to get good players coming in naturally for being bad at those levels. Here, you're going to get your roster rated. So I do feel like you're right. There's a little bit of a precipice here where it's like it could get bad here if they're not careful, if they're not able to figure something out and have kind of a reverse year next year, if they're not at least able to go something like 7-5 next year. And against that schedule, that'd be awfully good. I mean, this is a much better schedule, like you said.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know who they're playing for their non-conference games, but
they got North Carolina again, I think.
They're going to be 4-5, 5-4, 4-5 in the Big Ten most years, maybe 3-6 sometimes. So, yeah, it's tough sledding. We got the Dinky Town Collective coming up with. They got some guys to say that they're sticking around, so they're not losing everybody. But
No.
The fact that we're celebrating every time some guy says he's staying.
Right.
Well, you didn't stink this year, so. The team was 3-6 in the league, right? 3-6 was it? 3?
Yes, 3-6 in the league, correct.
3-6 in the league. So, and then that's the Big Ten West. You lost some of the worst games ever. So I don't know. I don't think we should have a parade every time some left tackle says he's sticking around. But yeah, I don't know where we're headed here. But Joe Rossi bailing is interesting because Michigan State right now is at the bottom.
Yeah.
How about them? Because they're going to play Michigan. They're going to have the guaranteed Michigan game every year.
Right.
They're out there in the East playing Penn State and Ohio State, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to Mel Tucker lawsuit. Are they really going to get away with not paying him anything?
I don't know. Well, I don't know.
The $90 million they owe him, they're not going to pay him anything. I doubt that. So.
Hey, speaking of optimism, you told me before we started recording that you heard on the Gopher men's broadcast the other day that one of the announcers was saying, hey, this should be a team in the top half of the Big Ten and an NCAA tournament team at the end of the year.
Okay, Fife now. This is Fife. I think he played at Michigan State. Now his daddy, Dan Fife, I believe that was his daddy who pitched for the Twins once way back 60 years ago, I think. But it's Fife, and he was kind of babbling, but I'm laying on the couch not paying much attention, reading it, and all he says, I think this will be a top 5-6 team in the Big Ten. Ben Johnson has going here. And then a guy kind of says, the guys with him's kind of, and he says, yeah, I'd be very surprised if they don't make the NCAA tournament. So he said that, and I'm not saying the guy's an expert. I'm just saying it surprised me that anyone had that opinion about our Gophers.
I mean,
Now there's some things I like about him. I like
Yes.
I like Ola Joseph and the big kid Payne, because they go down low and they knock the hell out of people trying to get to the basket. And Darson Garcia is okay when he's playing offensively, but I don't like their guards really too much.
No.
And although Christie's
all right. Yeah, he's going to be good.
He might be a player, but they're better. They're better, but I would be surprised if that optimism came to fruition. But that's part of the. I tweeted that out, by the way, and to the current attitude about Gopher basketball was such, everybody ridiculed it. Nobody said,
right,
hooray,
right.
So but then again, on Twitter and our comments and everything, you're not attracting the optimists too much.
You are. That is not a site X, Twitter, whatever we call it. It is not the place for optimists, is it? It is a place for. It's a place for
but
pessimism.
You look at the Big Ten right now, and there's a lot of rotten teams. Iowa's way worse than they are. McCaffrey got thrown out of the game again yesterday.
Jeez. If
you're an official, you don't hate him, you're not trying. But they're not good, and Purdue's supposedly good, but they're way overrated. And Michigan's not very good. It's a mediocre league, so I don't know. But when 8-12, that might save him. I think he's got to. They can't be horrible, or he won't save his job. But if if they end up 9th in the Big Ten or 10th in the Big Ten and go 8-12 or something, I think. Because they got a couple of recruits coming in, I think I think they give him another swing at it. So
they need to make tangible improvement this year, but that would certainly qualify as that. Now the women beat Purdue, dramatic finish. I think they had a steal and then a couple of free throws at the end to pull out one against Purdue. They only lost once all year, right? They lost to UConn. That was the only loss this year. They're pretty good too. We knew they had the players that now they've got Plitzowite coaching, and she's doing a pretty good job so far. Looks like.
Yeah, Mara Brown's a heck of a player the way it looks, and they got a couple others. They got this kid that she brought in that was a West Virginia recruit and then came here, shooter. What's her name?
Grace Grolchowski, is that the one?
Yeah. And she makes a lot of shots. I haven't watched them yet, so I can't really tell you. But you look at her numbers, she's a pretty good player. And they thought she was going to be a great player. So she's reaching that. Now you got to come up with some NIL money for them.
Everybody's getting it. Everybody wants it. And
well, the basketball, all the NIL money the Gophers are raising, the Dinkytown thing's going to Fleck.
Yes.
These other schools don't have any. I mean, look at volleyball. Jeff Day pointed this out to me. Booth went to Wisconsin. They're in the Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
Lennis went to Texas. They're in the Final Four. And the number one recruit, that Lainey Chobe from North Carolina, was going to come here, and I think she was like 1 or 2 in the country, and she ended up in Nebraska, and they're in the Final Four.
Yeah,
and they lost 3 great players. They switched coaches, and they also had no other incentive to keep them here. So volleyball is been an important sport over there, and I don't think they got any NIL money either. So it's we're pumping it all into football, and to what end? Where are you gonna be if you're pumping it all into? We hope to retain our mediocrity. That's right.
Yes.
So
we call it parity these days in sports. Mediocrity, we call it parity. But did you see the NCAA too wants, they're trying to say, hey, now the schools should be able to run these NIL collectives. Let's start paying players. Let's start doing this and that. They're kind of trying to change.
It looks like they're trying to put a limit on it.
Yes.
I don't think that works. To pay everybody $30,000 or whatever it was. Plus, that was only going to be select schools. That'd be like the top third of the Big Ten. You'd end up in the other. The plan that the president came out with didn't seem to make any sense to me at all.
Maybe it's a starting
I got
point,
one last complaint.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Wild game. I'm reading the Wild Gamer today.
Okay.
Right? This morning.
Yeah.
The new coach, Heinze.
Yeah. Heinze. Good.
He refers to Middleton as Mitty. And he refers to Faber as Fabes. He hasn't been here long enough to be calling them Mitty and Fabes. You got to be here at least a season before you start. Grow up, call them by their names. I hate it. You can't. Jake Middleton, crusty old defenseman.
Yeah.
Out there stumbling around.
Grow you a great playoff beard.
You can't be the coach for 2 weeks and call him Mitty, for goodness sake. Grow up.
What?
I'm down on you, Heinz. I'm already down on you. I don't know what happens, Heinz.
When do we decide if a guy gets the the Y sound at the end of his name, and when does he just get the S?
It's sure as hell not Mitty.
Middleton. That's an interesting. Mids,
the gorilla or something. But geez,
but some of these guys get the Y, Jake, and some of them get the S.
He's a Jake. Look at him. He's Jake. He doesn't have to be Mitty. He's Jake. Look at he's
got a one-syllable first name. He's got a one-syllable first name.
Plus, he looks like a Jake. He looks like a Jake, and now you moron, are calling him Mitty. And then we got Fabes. It's Fabes. Oh, hockey. Gardy would have been a great hockey coach because he did that with all of his baseball.
He did.
But you can't be here 2 weeks and start calling these guys Fabes and Mitty. Be here a little longer, and then you can be that familiar. You're not that familiar with them, buddy. So anyway.
I like it. That's a good rant. Good way to end it. Bookend the show with 3-0 victories by the Vikings and the Wild. Hey, maybe next week both teams will win 17-13. That'd be a new twist. I'd watch that hockey game. I tell you that much. I'd watch it more than a 3-0 football game.
Yes, sir. All right.
Good. Thank you.
Bye.